Hello, dear learner. I welcome you to the lecture 3 of week 10. And today's lecture is a continuation of lecture 1 and 2, which is on the topic that is the notion of ecological citizenship. So, before we begin the lecture, I would like to discuss with you a brief overview of the concepts to be covered today. The first is important features of ecological citizenship. Here we will see what are the essential features or the prime features of ecological citizenship. And second, we will see that what is the difference between the traditional notion of citizenship and ecological citizenship. So with that, we start with the important features of ecological citizenship. We have mentioned and also discussed one of the noted green political theorists, Andrew Dobson. Andrew Dobson argued that the nature of ecological citizenship is post-cosmopolitan in nature. Now, what we mean by the word post-cosmopolitan in nature? Post-cosmopolitanism means moving beyond the world or the globe, or you can say expanding the dimensions which constitute the scope of the citizenship. And in one more sense, this notion of post-cosmopolitanism is important because Andrew Dobson have rejected all the universalities or universalism which has been associated with the notion of cosmopolitanism. Because when we see that something which is global, then we also develop certain principles which can be applied universally. So therefore, he argues that we have to develop certain notions or alternative notions which also recognize the importance of diversity. So that is another meaning of the ecological citizenship as post-cosmopolitan in nature. Then the second important feature, which is underlined by Andrew Dobson himself, is that the nature of responsibility of ecological citizenship or citizens is non-contractual in nature and asymmetrical in nature. What do we mean by being non-contractual? Now, non-contractual means that the notion of citizenship is not conferred because of some type of contract being signed between the citizens and the state, as we find in the traditional notion of citizenship. We have already studied and seen quite a number of times that in the traditional notion of citizenship, there is a contract between the citizens and the states. If you read the social contract theories of the state, there you will see that the state has come into existence because of the social contract. State has come into existence to protect the rights and freedom of the individual or to prevent anarchy and chaos in the society. So therefore, it is the individual who have created the state. It's a type of contract that individuals will actually surrender certain rights to the states and perform certain obligations to the state, and the state in return will also ensure the well-being of the citizens and protect their rights. So you can see it is a type of contract, mutual contract. And since you are a member of a particular state, so you have been conferred the status of the citizenship of that country. So because of that status, you enjoy certain powers, you enjoy certain privileges and also rights, followed by certain obligations also. But this notion of citizenship is inadequate to address the environmental concerns. Why? Because everything cannot be contractual. When we are talking about environmental protection, when we are talking about protecting the environment so that they fulfill the needs of the future generation, then how can that be a contractual? Because we cannot expect some type of reciprocal obligations on the part of the future generation because they have not yet come into existence. So, how can it be contractual? It is not possible. Everything cannot be in the relationship, or everything cannot be like a relationship of give and take. Something which has to be based only on giving and not simply taking. So, therefore, the environmental or the ecological notion of citizenship is based on a non contractual nature, where there is no contract. The plants and animals have not signed any contract with us. It is non contractual. It is our duty and obligation as a member of the ecosystem to protect the rights or protect the space of every component of the environment or the ecosystem, and ensure that everybody is actually getting their due rights and position in the ecosystem. So, therefore, it is totally different from the traditional notion of citizenship, which is contractual in nature. And the next very important feature is the asymmetrical nature of obligations. Because in the traditional notion of citizenship, we have seen that there is a reciprocity, there is a symmetry of the responsibilities of citizens and states towards each other, or you can say an element of symmetry, if not complete symmetry. But the same cannot be expected in the case of ecological citizenship. The reason being that the responsibilities of the individuals in the society or the citizens in the society are different. And why these responsibilities are different? They are different because it is yet completely connected with the distribution of resources in the society. We know that in terms of distribution of wealth, there is so much of inequalities in the society. It is not only in the non-Western countries, but we also find glaring inequalities in social and economic respect in the Western world also. And with the rise of or with the advancement of new liberal policy, now this type of inequalities, especially in the economic and social field, has increased yet tremendously. So, when the access to the natural resources or fruits of production are not equal or equally distributed amongst the different segments of the population, then when it comes to sharing of responsibilities, how can the responsibilities be equal? It is highly unjust if you ask the poor and marginalized who have very less access to the natural resources, or who is having a very poor standard of living, to follow the same protocols regarding environmental protection or obligations as we expect from the rich and the powerful or influential segments of the society. Or for that matter, we cannot expect the same type of responsibilities from the Western countries as well as from the non-Western countries. So, therefore, Andrew Dobson has argued that those who are having the greater share of resources have greater responsibilities, and those who have the lesser share have the lesser responsibilities. Or in other words, those who are responsible for creation of more environmental devastation or destruction, they are supposed to pay more price in terms of fulfilling their responsibilities. And those whose impact or whose activities and their impact on the environment is not much in terms of destruction and devastation or exploitation, they are supposed to play or they are supposed to give back at a much lesser extent. So, therefore, Andrew Dobson has argued that the sense of responsibility or the notion of responsibility in the case of ecological citizenship is asymmetrical in nature. Now, the next important component of ecological citizenship is environmental rights. In our earlier lectures also, we have discussed about the importance of environmental rights. Now, why these rights are important? Because the exercise of environmental rights are dependent on the fact these are to be enjoyed by all equally and by everyone, and each one of them will benefit from the exercise of these rights. Or environmental rights are one of the important stepping stone to achieve or establish the notion of ecological democracy as well as to achieve the notion of ecological citizenship. So therefore, rights are the first step because rights are the legal enactments. They help in actually giving legitimacy to certain claims and demands which are associated with environmental protection. And it makes the citizen mandatory or the private parties or the capitalist group or the industrial houses to take adequate measures as per the legal provision. So therefore, environmental rights are a very important parameter, or they provide a guideline for not only fighting for rights, but also they provide a guideline for starting any type of activism against the environmental injustices. So therefore, they are important. Another very unique feature of the ecological citizenship is that Andrew Robson says it is the citizenship of the foreigners. Sometimes it is also known as the citizenship of the strangers. Now, what does that mean? Now, if we try to analyze the traditional notion of citizenship, then we can see that in a country or in a state where we reside and we are the citizen of that country, but still it is not possible for one person to know all the people who are the citizens of a particular country. Forget about the entire state. If we try to remember and find out whether we know all the persons in our locality or in the city where we are staying, then we will find that it is not possible for an individual to remember and recognize each and every individual by their name and anything else which are important to understand and recognize them. So, if it is not possible for the individual to remember the names and the other affiliations of individuals or the co-citizens of his country, then we can say that to an extent in the traditional notion of the citizenship also, we find that the citizens are strangers to each other. They don't know, but they are binded by the notion of the feeling of citizenship or the feeling of brotherhood or the feeling of pride. And that is more manifested when we go abroad, and then our identity is an Indian identity. It is not whether we are belonging to a particular caste or religion or creed. It is not important when we are abroad. When we are abroad, our Indian identity or Indian citizenship is what matters. So there we are tied or binded with all the other Indian citizens with a sense of brotherhood, with a sense of belongingness, because citizenship, it not only gives us an identity, but it also gives us a sense of brotherhood. So therefore, that in the traditional notion of citizenship also, there is an element of being a sense of the element of stranger, a foreign element when we try to understand and recognize each other. But in the case of ecological citizenship, this element of being stranger is much more larger in scope, and also it extends to larger domain of the ecosystem. At the first instance, it accepts that citizens are strangers to each other, because here we are not simply talking about the state, we are extending our boundaries to the ecosystem, and it is a vast ecosystem. Now it is comprising not only individuals but the non-human world. It is also comprising the inanimate world. So it is not humanly possible to remember and recognize each one of the components of the ecosystem. So therefore, they are strangers to each other. And this strangeness is more in the case of the ecological citizenship in comparison to the traditional notion of citizenship. Explaining further, Andrew Dobson says that they are strangers also in terms of time and space. Now, this is very important. He is actually underlying or delineating the various dimensions of this strangeness or this element of being stranger. And when he is saying that we are strangers in terms of time, what does that mean? It means that when we are talking about our responsibilities and obligations, it is not only to the people whom we know, but also to those people who are beyond our time, which means who are not living in the present. They are not yet born. They are the future generation. They may be our grandchildren, and we owe a type of responsibility towards them. So this is known as extension of our boundaries beyond the limitations of time. So we are stranger in terms of time also, because we owe an obligation to the future generation who are not even present now. We don't know who they will be. Who are they? What will be their identities? We don't know anything about them. They are not yet born, but still we owe a responsibility. And this also forms an important element of the sustainable development, which says that we have to adopt that model of development which not only helps in meeting the needs of the present generation, but also in fulfilling the needs of the future generation. And the reason being that what we do today will influence the lives of people who will come tomorrow. If we pollute the water, then there will be no clean water for the future generation. And for the children and their grandchildren for whom we are saving money, we are doing everything to make their life comfortable. But unfortunately, if we do not take care of these important elements or we do not take care of our practices, we are going to make their life extremely uncomfortable in days to come. So these 2 points are very important. Now, what we mean by stranger in times of space? Stranger in times of space means it extends beyond the boundaries to an infinite space, because we have responsibilities not only to preserve the ecosystem of this planet, but also other planets. So we can go on extending. So therefore, boundaries in terms of space is immense and also diverse. We know that what is the level of biodiversity in our ecosystem. It is not even possible to remember that how much rich our biolife or our hemisphere has been in terms of various types of species. So therefore, in terms of space also, we find that it is enormous, it is massive, and there also it is not possible to know each one of them, or it is not possible to understand and recognize each of the components of the ecosystem. Hence, therefore, the ecological citizen's responsibilities extend beyond time and space, and I think this is one of the most important difference between the ecological citizenship and the traditional notion of citizenship. Now, connected with these 2 points is the next point is The responsibilities that ecological citizens has to future generation and to other species cannot be based on the principle of the reciprocity. Because the ecological citizens cannot expect anything in return from the future generation and other species for discharging their responsibilities towards them. So it is not a bargain, it is not the give and take. It is based on non-reciprocal relationship or non-reciprocal notion where we have to fulfill our responsibilities knowing the fact that we are not going to expect anything in return. So, for that we have to rise above the self-interest or self-utility maximization or the narrow scope of our understanding of our behavior, of our action and thought processes. That without asking for anything, how we can give back to the environment or to the other species on this earth. So, this is another very important aspect of ecological citizenship. Now, ecological citizens are both global as well as the sustainable citizens. Global, we have already studied in our previous lecture that the eco-citizenship are nothing but a type of global citizenship and also it extends beyond it. And more so, it is a type of a citizenship which talks about building sustainable citizens. We have already seen in our previous lecture that how green state can be built only with the help of green citizens. So ultimately we have to focus on the citizens who can actually bring about substantial changes in the society. Then another very important aspect or component of ecological citizenship is reducing our ecological footprint. I think this is one of the most important component of our discussions about the environmental protection. Now, what we mean by the concept of ecological footprint? Ecological footprint is a measure that indicates how much resources from the environment are required to support a particular way of life or business. That means how much we are extracting from the environment, how much natural resources we are using, whether by an individual or by the state or some industries for achieving its objective or for bringing about the industrial production. In fact, in other words, it can be stated that it indicates the amount of pressure that humans put on the natural resources available to them in their surrounding because of their activity. So, therefore, it is called ecological footprint, which means in simple words that how much impact we are putting on the environment or pressure we are putting on the environment because of our activities as an individual, because of our unsustainable lifestyle or because of our wrong choices of economic modes of production or because of any other destructive activities undertaken by the state. So, that is known as the ecological footprint. Ecological footprint is a very important element of eco-citizenship because that will determine how much we owe to other people on this earth or to other components of the ecosystem. It will also help in ensuring environmental justice because environmental justice says that those who have polluted the world or ecosystem have to share more responsibilities in terms of rectifying the damage done to the ecosystem. So, therefore, ecological footprint has been an important component of ecological citizenship. Then, we very much know by this time that unsustainable lifestyles have created greater ecological footprint causing environmental problems. It is the unsustainable lifestyle and also the impact of the new liberal policies of development or the process or the outcome of modernization, they all have been responsible for creating a massive ecological footprint. which has ultimately led to creation of so many environmental problems. Hence, there is need to make changes in our lifestyle if we want to make our footprint sustainable. Because it is not possible that we will not use anything from the environment because our lives are dependent on it. But we have to use it in such a way that it is sustainable in nature. It not only fulfills our basic needs, but also it preserves and protects the environment, and also it preserves enough to fulfill the basic needs of the future generation. So that is known as making the ecological footprint sustainable. Now, according to Andrew Dobson, reducing the footprint does not remove right to adequate ecological share. So if we say that we have to reduce the ecological footprint, it does not mean that your share of the ecosystem will reduce. It is not like that. Everybody is having the right to adequate ecological share. Everybody is having the right because that is necessary for sustaining our lives. But the responsibility of reducing the ecological footprint is more on the developed countries rather than on the less developed countries or the developing countries, because the developed countries have more utilized the natural resources. And similar argument can be given for those who are the rich and the powerful, who are using more resources than the poor and the marginalized. Hence, they owe much greater responsibility towards environmental protection or towards reducing the footprint on the ecology in terms of those who are poor and marginalized. For this, there is need for a sense of environmental justice, about which I have been talking about, which talks of maintaining a parity in terms of distribution of resources and also in terms of sharing of responsibilities. Now, environmental justice is a very important component of the eco-citizenship, because ultimately the objective of eco-citizenship or the eco-citizens is to achieve environmental justice. Ecological citizens are those who take initiatives for establishing environmental justice. Otherwise, eco-citizenship has very limited value, because there can be innumerable environmental rights, but in practice they may not be followed. So, what is the use of having environmental rights? The citizens have to be active in nature. And the second is participation of people in the process of environmental decision making is another important element of eco-citizenship. So, along with the activism, they have to also participate in the processes of environmental decision making, whether at the local level, at the national level, or at the international level. Now, we must remember that participation of people in the decision making process is not only a right, because it is already mentioned and given in the environmental rights, but it is also the fundamental duty of the citizens. It is very, very important. Now, the traditional notion of citizenship has been associated with the notion of nation state. Now, we come to some of the important differences between the traditional notion of citizenship and the ecological citizenship. And we know that in the traditional notion of citizenship, the concept of citizen has been vis-a-vis the relationship with the state or the nation, whereas ecological citizenship encourages to consider individuals as citizens of the ecosystem. Now, the traditional notion of citizenship is an exclusionary concept, as it creates notion of who belongs and who does not belong to a territory. Ecological notion of citizenship is an ever widening concept, and therefore it is inclusive in nature. Third is, we have already discussed this point, that is the traditional notion of citizenship is contractual in nature. It is based on contract between the state and the individual, whereas the ecological citizenship is non-contractual in nature, because it is unilateral in nature. You have to function, you have to perform the responsibility based on the sense of responsibility and norms of environmental justice, about which we have already discussed. So, I would like to again emphasize upon the second point, where I have said that the traditional notion of citizenship is an exclusionary concept. It excludes, because when I say that I am the citizen of a particular state, then it means that I am excluding all those who are not members of that particular state. And you know that wars have been fought between states because of these feelings of exclusion, or because of these issues of nationalism and in the name of national interest. So therefore, there are severe limitations to the traditional notion of citizenship, and I have already discussed that this is not adequate to address the environmental concerns or problems which the present mankind is facing. Therefore, we have to shift to the ecological notion of citizenship, which is ever widening. It's not having a fixed boundary, but its boundaries are continuously expanding to include more and more elements of ecosystem, and therefore it is inclusive in nature. So we need an inclusive concept of citizenship rather than an exclusive concept. So with that, we come to the end of this lecture, followed by certain activity questions which are based on the topics which I have covered today. Like, what is the difference between traditional and ecological citizenship? What is non-contractual nature of the citizenship? Write important features of ecological citizenship. Why in ecological citizenship, citizens are strangers to each other? Then these questions are followed by some statements or questions which are aimed at steering your imagination. Like, think of the 5 ways in which you can reduce your ecological footprint on this earth. At your own level, how can you do that? Can you think of some of the unsustainable lifestyle practiced by people around you? Do you think that the symmetrical responsibility will find acceptance among the rich and the powerful? Give reasons to support your answer. So with this, I come to the end of this lecture. Hope you have enjoyed it. Thank you very much.